Gay San Francisco in the 1970s, a disco-fueled cauldron of sex, art, power, riots, and liberation. It was an incredible time and place to be queer. There was the grassroots rise of Harvey Milk, the seductive music of Sylvester, queen of disco, the bawdy theater of the Cockettes, the invention of the pride flag, the first gay liberation march. There were countless revolutionary stories being told. And there was also Phyllis. Wait, who? So, Phyllis. Short-lived spin-off of the Mary Tyler Moore Show starring Cloris Leachman. You might know her from Young Frankenstein, where she played Frau Blucher. On Phyllis, she played a recent widow who moved from Minnesota to San Francisco to start her life anew at the same time that in real life a queer revolution was underway, and she ran right into it. Hey friends, it's Matt Baume. I make videos about queer pop culture history, and I want to show you how this often overlooked sitcom managed to wander into an incredibly exciting queer time and place, and to bring a message of gay liberation to audiences at the same time as Harvey Milk. And by the way, if you want to watch any of the shows that I talk about in this video, I've got links to them in the description, and if you're enjoying these videos, I've also got a link to my Patreon, which you can join and help me make more videos like this. So, Phyllis. The show was an attempt to capture some of the magic of the Mary Tyler Moore Show, which had been a huge ratings hit. There were lots of great people behind the scenes on both projects. A lot of them would go on to create hits like Cheers and Frasier and The Simpsons. Phyllis premiered in 1975 and was about a plucky single lady exploring an exciting new city. And we'll talk about why San Francisco was so exciting in just a minute, and also learning how to date. And just a side note here, this is where Phyllis is supposed to live on the show. You know, it's one of those very normal San Francisco apartments with a spiral staircase and pillars and a sunken living room conversation pit. I lived in San Francisco for 10 years, and that sofa is larger than some apartments I spent time in. Anyway, in the season 2 episode, Out of the Closet, not exactly a subtle title, we meet Phyllis's new boyfriend, Scott. He's a nice guy, respectful, maybe to a fault.
You've always been a perfect gentleman with me, but there's only so much of that a woman can stand.
Phyllis is starting to wonder, why isn't Scott more passionate? She's starting to worry there might be something the matter with her, so Scott decides to confess his deep, dark secret.
What's wrong with me, Scott?
Phyllis, the problem isn't with you, it's with me. I'm gay.
Well, that is about as supportive a reaction as you could possibly hope for. It's almost as though Phyllis has received news like this before. Actually, she has. Back in 1973, there was an episode of the Mary Tyler Moore Show called My Brother's Keeper, in which Phyllis is worried that her brother is falling for the neighbor, Rhoda, whom she can't stand, and she threatens to turn it into a whole thing, until Rhoda explains why there's nothing going on between her and Phyllis's brother.
He's not my type. What do you mean, he's not your type? He is witty. He is attractive. He's successful. He's single. He's gay. I thought sure you know, Phil. We're not getting married. Oh, Rhoda, I'm so relieved.
Hey, maybe she could introduce her boyfriend to her brother. And by the way, I have a whole separate video about that episode of the Mary Tyler Moore Show. There's a link to that in the description. Anyway, now Scott is out, but that's not the end of his troubles. Remember, it's the mid-1970s. Not the worst time to be a gay person in America, but also not the best. Homosexuality was, until a few years earlier, considered a mental illness. It was illegal in most of the country, and a national news show had just aired an episode entitled, Are Gays Going to Hell? Sadly, I haven't been able to find a copy of that episode, so I guess we'll just never know the answer. Anyway, now that he's out, Scott assumes that Phyllis wants nothing to do with him.
Don't you want me to leave?
Of course not. Is that the reaction you usually receive from people you tell?
Scott, it turns out, is really suffering. Being in the closet is miserable for him. He has to go to great lengths to lie about who he is.
I do ridiculous things, like dating you. I didn't mean that the way it sounded.
I understand. You were using me as a cover so people wouldn't get suspicious.
Is Cloris Leachman television's first beard? Good for her. Time for another little side note here. Beards, that is, women who stand in as girlfriends for closeted gay men, are explored in a bit more depth 20 years later on an episode of Seinfeld entitled, and you're never gonna believe this, The Beard. In that one, Elaine poses as a girlfriend for a gay guy going on a date to the opera where she tries to convince her date's boss that he's straight. And hey, do you notice anything about the boss?
You and Robert.
Yep.
I'm surprised.
Why?
No reason.
The boss is played by the same actor who plays Scott on this episode of Phyllis. What is the significance of that? Probably nothing. It's almost certainly one of those just weird TV coincidences. There probably isn't a Seinfeld-Phyllis television universe. Except that there kind of is, because Phyllis is a spin-off of The Mary Tyler Moore Show, which shared characters with the show Hi Honey, I'm Home, which shared characters with the Dick Van Dyke Show, which was in the same universe as Mad About You, which did a crossover with Seinfeld, so actually, it checks out. I'm not sure what checks out, but something must. Anyway, same actor. Weird. Where was I? Oh, right. Scott wants to keep up the charade, to introduce Phyllis to his parents as his girlfriend. Phyllis doesn't like the sound of that. She wants him to come out. He says that he will, but then at the last second, he gets nervous. And here's what he says instead.
Phyllis and I are getting married.
With a good strong act break, this is a wonderful plot thickener, very effective. So effective, in fact, that the Golden Girls used a variation on it a decade later in the episode Scared Straight. In that one, Blanche's brother Clayton comes to town, Rose finds out he's gay, she urges him to come out. He says that he will, but instead, this is what he blurts out.
We slept together tonight.
I also have a whole video about that episode that you can watch, link in the description. Phyllis isn't thrilled to learn that she's engaged, and she keeps pushing Scott to tell the truth.
These are the 1970s. Being gay isn't something you have to hide anymore.
Okay, Phyllis, not so fast. Let's talk about that. First of all, it's a little weird to hear someone declare what decade it is outside of a story about time travel. Second, she's not actually entirely wrong. San Francisco was a pretty incredible place to be openly gay in the 1970s. For one thing, the Castro had just been solidified as the city's gay neighborhood. A local musician named Sylvester was becoming an international star, and he really hit with the song You Make Me Feel. He was declared the worldwide queen of disco. There was a new avant-garde psychedelic gay theater troupe going on called the Cockettes that staged wild, raunchy shows like Tinsel Tarts in a Hot Coma and Journey to the Center of Uranus. At one point, the Cockettes filmed a drag version of Trisha Nixon's wedding. Nixon staffers actually arranged a secret screening of that in the White House. There's also a huge proliferation of gay bars. Places like Twin Peaks, the first gay bar in the US to have big picture windows so you could see in, rather than everybody inside trying to hide. It's actually one of my favorite gay bars in the world, still there. And another quick side note, if you're ever in the Castro, and there isn't a pandemic going on, go to Twin Peaks and look for the little spiral staircase at the back of the bar that goes up to the balcony. It's the best place to watch people in the entire Castro. And the cookie shop next door vents their exhaust through the wall, so you'll come out smelling like cookies. It's a little tip from me to you. Also in the 70s, Gilbert Baker created the first pride flag. Armistead Maupin launched his Tales of the City stories, which chronicled gay life in San Francisco. The Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence were founded. They're an order of drag nuns that does good deeds around the city still to this day. There's the city's first Gay Liberation Day, the first federal employee to successfully challenge being fired for being gay. The first sex worker advocacy group, Coyote, was founded. There's a huge leather district thriving south of Market. San Francisco in the 1970s was exciting and chaotic and revolutionary and incredibly queer. And then, of course, there was Harvey Milk. Where even to start with Harvey? He's famous today for being one of the first openly gay elected officials in the country. But in 1976, when this episode of Phyllis aired, barely anyone outside the city knew his name. He was just some gay guy who owned a camera store. People in the Castro loved him. They called him the mayor of Castro Street because he was always involved, always helping people out, and at some point he decided maybe he should be more than just an unofficial city leader, and he ran for the Board of Supervisors. It was a long shot. Even in a gay paradise like San Francisco, it seemed impossible that a gay man could win public office. In fact, it was impossible, at least at first. The first time that Harvey ran, he came in 10th place. But he kept at it for years. He ran again and again. Every time he got more support, more people paid attention to the gay guy with a camera store, more people started to believe in him, but not just in him as a candidate, but in the possibility that people like him, people who were used to always being outsiders, could actually win. And then, eventually, in 1978, he did.
And it was more than just, a candidate winning. It was the fact that all of these lesbians and gay men throughout San Francisco who had felt like they'd had no voice before now had someone who represented them.
As a leader, Harvey talked a lot about making life better for gay people. He said that almost everything he did with an eye to the gay movement. And he especially talked about the importance of coming out. Here he is addressing another election night crowd.
Every gay person must come out. As difficult as it is, you must tell your immediate family, you must tell your relatives, you must tell your friends if indeed they are your friends, you must tell your neighbors, you must tell the people you work with, you must tell the people in the stores you shop in.
It's like he's talking directly to Scott in this episode. So why was coming out such a big deal? Well, as great as San Francisco was in the 1970s, Harvey wasn't from there, and he knew how rough people had it in other places across the country. He believed one reason San Francisco had become such a wonderful place for gay people was that so many people had come out there, and that only by coming out can queer people dispel all the ignorance and lies about them. Here's Harvey again.
Once they realize that we are indeed their children and we are indeed everywhere, every myth, every lie, every innuendo will be destroyed once and for all. And once you do, you will feel so much better.
He gave that speech in 1978. Now compare that to Phyllis talking to Scott 2 years earlier.
You have to tell the people you love the truth about yourself.
Someday, when the right moment presents itself.
Oh, the right moment will never present itself. It's only going to get tougher the longer you wait. Why didn't you tell them tonight? Oh, you'll feel so much better.
You'll feel so much better. It's the exact same words. Uncanny. I don't think Harvey was plagiarizing from Phyllis. I think they share the same language for a much simpler reason. It's just true. Phyllis shares Harvey's urgency throughout the episode, especially after Scott surprise engages her. Scott's parents throw them an engagement party, and one more side note here. Have you ever seen so many ferns in your life? They even rolled one out on a cart. Anyway, at the engagement party, Phyllis issues an ultimatum. If Scott doesn't tell his parents the truth, she's gonna call his bluff. She'll go through with the wedding.
Either you tell it, or some morning very soon, you will wake up in Niagara Falls next to me.
That's the push that he needs. Scott spends a few minutes with his parents in a separate room, and then he comes out.
Phyllis, you are looking at a man who just stepped out of prison.
I think a lot of people can identify with that feeling. It's called liberation for a reason. Scott is overjoyed to be out. Looks like Harvey and Phyllis were right, and suddenly his engagement party is a coming out party.
And Dorothy, I'm gay. I'm gay. I'm gay. I am gay. I'm gay.
He's gay!
He's gay!
He's gay! Did you hear the news? He's gay!
No wonder Scott's excited. I'd be excited too. There is so much that he gets to see and experience as an openly gay man in San Francisco in the 1970s. The music, the art, the parades, the bars. There's a lot of big things ahead for Scott, and for queer people in real life too. A year later, Harvey Milk would win elected office. The next year, anti-gay groups put a measure on a ballot that would require schools to fire gay teachers. Harvey mobilized the state against it, and thanks in part to the political organizing machine that he built, that measure was defeated. It was a huge milestone for queer power, one of the first times that LGBTQ people were able to push back against bigotry at the ballot box. You probably know what happened next. Harvey was killed by a political rival, gone just like that. The movement that he started, though, that didn't disappear. The inspiration. Thousands of people flooded into the streets to remember Harvey and what he stood for. That belief that people could work together to make things better. He proved that that was true, and that it can start by simply coming out, living openly, so more people can do the same.
That there's hope for a better world. There's hope for a better tomorrow. I know that you cannot live on hope alone, but without it, life is not worth living. And you've got to give them hope. Thank you very much.
Thanks for watching, and big thanks to everyone who makes these videos possible with support on Patreon. You can join me over there at patreon.com/mattbaume. And you can also join me over on Twitch, where I live stream games and also just chat about this kind of stuff every Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 2 to 6 p.m. Pacific. That's at twitch.tv/mattbaume. Now, if you'll excuse me, time for me and Phyllis to enjoy a little nightcap.
Ovaltine.